You light something on fire and breathe the smoke in. It changes how you feel. It changes how you think. And for a few minutes, the world is different. You probably think of that as a modern problem, a habit born from cigarette companies and addiction and convenience stores. But here is what nobody tells you. Humans have been inhaling smoke on purpose for at least 50,000 years, maybe longer, and the reasons had almost nothing to do with nicotine. So what did ancient humans actually smoke? The answer is stranger, older, and more human than you ever expected. Before we go back in time, consider your own body for a moment. Your lungs were not designed for smoke. Your brain, though your brain was designed to respond to certain plant compounds in very specific ways, compounds that alter your perception, dull your pain, or sharpen your focus. That response did not begin when someone invented cigarettes. It began long before the first city, the first farm, the first written word. The earliest solid evidence we have comes from roughly 50,000 years ago, deep in the Paleolithic era, the Old Stone Age, when anatomically modern humans were spreading across the globe with fire as their constant companion. Fire was heat, light, protection, and cooking. But fire also produced something else: smoke. And at some point, a human being noticed that certain plants, when thrown into flames, did something unusual to the air, something to the mind. The question archaeologists have spent decades trying to answer is, when did that accidental observation become intentional? The answer, it turns out, was very early. Let's reconstruct a scene. Picture your ancestor 50,000 years ago in what is now southern Africa. The night is cold. A small group huddles around a fire inside a shallow rock shelter. Someone tosses a bundle of dried plants onto the coals, not for warmth, but for a purpose. The smoke thickens, the air smells sharp and herbal, and the group begins to talk, or sing, or fall into a kind of shared trance. This is not speculation. In 2010, archaeologist Lynn Wadley and her team excavating Sabudu Cave in South Africa found evidence that ancient humans were burning specific aromatic plants around their sleeping areas as far back as 77,000 years ago. The plants included species with known insect-repelling and sedating properties. Whether this counts as intentional inhalation is still debated. But the behavior selecting specific plants for their smoke was already present in anatomically modern humans tens of thousands of years before anyone built a single monument. The oldest unambiguous evidence of ritual smoke inhalation comes from the ancient world's most consistent tradition, shamanism. Across Siberia, Central Asia, the Americas, and sub-Saharan Africa, the same pattern appears independently in cultures that had no contact with each other. A ritual specialist burns specific plants. The smoke is inhaled. The person enters an altered state, and that state is interpreted as contact with another world. This is not coincidence. Anthropologist Michael Winkelmann has argued extensively that shamanic trance states, including those induced by plant smoke, are one of the most universally distributed behaviors in all of human prehistory. The plants change by continent. The ritual does not. So what were the plants? In the Americas, tobacco was the first and most sacred, not the bleached, additive-soaked cigarette tobacco you know today, but Nicotiana rustica, a wild variety so potent it makes modern cigarettes feel like breathing fresh air. Archaeological evidence from sites in the American Southwest, studied by researchers at the University of New Mexico, has found tobacco residue in pipes dating back more than 3,000 years. But tobacco use in indigenous communities almost certainly predates that evidence by thousands more years. In many traditions, tobacco was not a casual pleasure. It was an offering, a medicine, a channel to the spirit world. You did not smoke it to relax. You smoked it to communicate with something larger than yourself. In the ancient Near East, what is now Iran and Afghanistan, the plant was cannabis. This surprises almost no one, but the timeline surprises most people. In 2019, a team of researchers led by Yimin Yang published findings from the Yerzhankal Cemetery in western China, dating to around 500 BCE, where wooden braziers showed chemical residue of high THC cannabis that had clearly been burned in enclosed spaces for inhalation. The site was almost certainly ritual. The cannabis was not weak roadside weed. The THC concentrations suggest either deliberately cultivated high-potency strains or a naturally occurring environment that favored stronger plants. Either way, people were getting profoundly altered. But cannabis and tobacco are only the beginning. Across ancient Europe, a plant called Henbane Hyoscyamus niger was burned and inhaled for its powerful hallucinogenic effects. Henbane belongs to the nightshade family and contains compounds called tropane alkaloids chemicals that, at the right dose, produce vivid hallucinations, an intense sense of flying, and profound dissociation from the body. Some historians believe that the infamous flying ointments of European witch trials, the recipes that supposedly let witches fly to Sabbaths, were largely based on henbane and related nightshade plants. Those plants may have been smoked or absorbed through the skin. The effect, either way, was the same. In 2019, at an Iron Age site called Pit 71 inches Jutland, Denmark, researchers found a container holding charred henbane seeds alongside other ritual objects. This was deliberate burning. This was intentional inhalation. And this was in northern Europe around 400 BCE. In ancient Greece, the oracle at Delphi, the most powerful religious institution in the ancient world, may have inhaled volcanic gases rising through a fissure in the earth below the temple. Geologist Gel de Boer and historian John Hale proposed in 2001 that the trances of the Pythia, the oracle's priestess, were induced by ethylene gas, a sweet-smelling compound with anesthetic and dissociative effects seeping up through limestone faults directly beneath the temple floor. Not a plant, not a fire, but intentional inhalation of a mind-altering substance was almost certainly involved. Now here is the part that most people miss entirely. The ancient humans who smoked did not think they were getting high. That framing is entirely modern. For most of human prehistory, the altered state was the point not as escape, but as access. Access to visions, to ancestors, to knowledge that could not be reached through ordinary waking consciousness. The smoke was a technology, a tool for crossing a threshold the sober mind could not cross. This is why the same pattern keeps appearing on every inhabited continent. Humans discovered, independently and repeatedly, that burning certain plants and breathing their smoke produced states that felt meaningful. That felt true. That felt like contact with something real. And then agriculture happened. Around 10,000 years ago, as humans began farming, something shifted. Plants that had been sacred and rare became cultivable. Tobacco, cannabis, poppy, you could grow them deliberately. You could store them. You could trade them. The shift from ritual scarcity to agricultural abundance changed what these substances meant. Slowly, over centuries, the sacred became the habitual. The ceremonial pipe became the casual smoke. The medicine became the addiction. This is not unique to smoking. It is what happens when any scarce ritual object enters the logic of mass production. What your body still carries underneath all of that history is the same neurological architecture your ancestors had when they gathered around those fires. Your brain still has the receptors that respond to these plant compounds, the nicotinic receptors that bind tobacco alkaloids, the endocannabinoid system that cannabis hijacks, the serotonin pathways that plant hallucinogens act upon. Those systems were not built for abuse. They were built because certain plant compounds had been interacting with human brains for so long that the brain evolved around them. You are, in some sense, still the creature who once sat in a cave and noticed that certain smoke did something strange to the air. So, the next time you see someone stepping outside for a cigarette, or lighting incense in a quiet room, or reading about yet another state legalizing cannabis, remember what you are actually looking at. You are looking at 50,000 years of human behavior compressed into a small flame. A practice that once opened the gates of the spirit world, that once summoned the dead, that once flew witches across the night sky, now reduced to a nervous habit between meetings. You light something on fire and breathe the smoke in. It changes how you feel. It changes how you think. You always have.